The Emperor has no clothes. The Supreme Court has no robes. That's obviously what we're going to be talking about tonight on Beyond Reason Radio. I'm Mike Yaffee, of course, the voice of reason that likes to shift through everything in the news that is well beyond reason. And I'm also the voice of the millennial generation, the voice of the Yaffee generation. Here we talk faith, culture, and politics. And all three of those things are going to be in tonight's episode dealing with the Supreme Court rulings. We've had two major rulings this week that obviously have an effect on all of those things. And specifically today, which is what everybody is talking about, is the ruling on gay marriage. We're going to talk about people's reactions. I want to get your reaction as well. You can call 407-674-1025, toll free 855-545-1025. And joining me tonight, the new executive producer of Beyond Reason Radio, we have Mr. Michael Formisano. How you doing, Mike?
Oh, that sounds good to hear. You mind saying it one more time?
Yes, I do mind. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm glad. Oh, you're gonna say it again. Go ahead.
Executive producer, Mr. Michael Formisano.
Oh, thank you, Mike. It's great to be back here.
Yeah, you were the former intern when I because I produce, as many of you know, Bud Hettinger Live on this station every morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And Mike was an intern for us, and I wanted to bring him on board for this show. So this show can be the voice for the millennial generation, as we are both part of the millennial generation. So yes, it's exciting stuff. And as first job as executive producer, will you please unbusy the phones for me?
Will do.
Thanks. But actually, before you do that, though, I want to ask you something. Obviously, you're big on social media like everybody else in our generation. What have you seen today? What's the reaction that you have seen today?
A better thing to ask is, what haven't I seen today?
Yeah, exactly.
First of all, Facebook's been lighting up in rainbow colors.
Yep, of course. We work for iHeartMedia, of course, and on the iHeartRadio app, they even changed the logo into rainbow colors. It's amazing.
It really
all
is.
Because, think about this. This is all because 5 people in black robes decided that it's law now. That's where we are. But tell me some of the reaction you've seen. There's got to be something.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually a lot of people very happy about the decision. A lot of people confused, actually, about the whole decision.
Confused in what way?
In a way, like, what does this mean now? You know, what's changed?
Because they don't even know how any of this works. But go ahead.
Exactly. But it's been an interesting day on social media. A lot of people are very happy. A lot of people are trying to figure out, what difference it's going to make in their lives. But nonetheless,
yep,
5 people, like you said.
Yep, here we are. All right, 407-674-1025, toll free 855-545-1025. You want to talk about this? By the way, you can catch the show, the podcast show. If you miss any of the show, you can catch it at beyondreasonradio.com. You know what I noticed? The main thing that I noticed today, especially on my social media, but people out there, when it comes to this gay marriage decision, and those of you who are not keeping up with the news, well, you should before listening, but those of you who don't know, Supreme Court ruled in a case that gay marriage should be legalized, is now legal in all 50 states. You cannot ban it. The states cannot ban it. That's what the Supreme Court has ruled in a 5-4 decision where Justice Kennedy, the more moderate justice, had decided with the liberal members of the court. And this is what I've noticed from people out there in my social media. It's like they're happy about it, and it's like, oh, thank you, court. Thank you, great rulers. I bow to you that you have let us do this. Think about this. This was not decided by the people. It was not decided by the states. It was not decided by the people's representatives, and it was not decided by the Constitution. It was decided, like I said, by 5 people who happen to be Supreme Court justices right now. 5 people in black robes. And they're happy about it because to them, this is liberty. We now have more liberty than ever. And they're happy about it because they won their issue. But this is going to come bite you in the butt one day. Think about how much power you are giving to those 5 people. The Supreme Court has 9 people, but 5 people were the ones who decided this. Think about how much power you're giving them. Right now, they chose with you. They're on your side. But that doesn't mean they always will be. And you have no say anymore. This is where we are. It's amazing. One of the presidential candidates, Ben Carson, who I quote a lot on this show, he had mentioned, he said we have to make sure this doesn't discriminate against Christianity and Christian churches. But he had mentioned that this is now the law of the land, he said. This is now the law of the land. What law? That's what I would ask him. What law? There was no law. It's not like the Congress made a law mandating that this was illegal and the Supreme Court interpreted it and ruled on that. No, there is no law. This was an issue decided by certain states. Some states and people chose not to have it. Others chose to have it. And there is no law that exists, but the Supreme Court, on its own, decided, hey, it's law now because I said so. So if you're for this, and I know many of you are, obviously, here's the most politically incorrect thing I'm going to say. And a lot of people, I've said this before, and a lot of people might disagree with me. The fact is, a gay person has always had the right to get married in this country. They have always had the right to get married. They just had to marry someone of the opposite sex. You laugh at that, but think about it. If marriage, for thousands of years, the definition of marriage has always been between a man and a woman, a gay person could marry a gay guy can marry a woman, or a gay woman can marry a guy. They've always had the right to get married if that's what marriage is. So when you talk about this is a rights issue, no, it's not a rights issue. You already had the right. This is about changing and expanding the definition of marriage. Marriage is no longer what it used to be. Marriage is something else. So I'm going to go over here a little bit of what the justices' opinions were, and it's amazing how they came to this conclusion. But I just warn you, a lot of people, especially in my generation, you have just given power for the rest of your lives, a lot of power to the Supreme Court. A lot of power that they were not supposed to have. It wasn't decided by the people. And you might like it now, but just be warned. There could be something where you don't like it, and what are you going to do? Can't do anything. It's now the law of the land. Now, writing the majority opinion was Justice Kennedy for this case. And it's amazing when you read this because this is his argument here. No union is more profound than marriage, he says. From their beginning to their most recent page, the annals of human history reveal that the transcendent importance of marriage. The lifelong union of a man and a woman always has promised nobility and dignity to all persons, without regard to their station in life. Marriage is sacred to those who live by their religions and offer unique fulfillment to those who find meaning in the secular realm. Its dynamic allows two people to find a life that could not be found alone, for a marriage becomes greater than just the two persons. Rising from the most basic human needs, marriage is essential to our most profound hopes. And then he continued on, basically saying that all love is equal, that this just lets gay couples participate in that sacred bond that they weren't allowed to participate anymore. It doesn't matter that the definition of that sacred bond never included that. Now, apparently, we've expanded the definition. But here's the main point I want to make about this. Everything in his ruling is an interpretation about how this is good for society, how the past society was a certain way, and how expanding this is good for a society, and we're helping all because love is equal. Well, that's all fine and good. I would disagree with that, but fine. A lot of people agree with that. That's all fine and good. But it's not your job as a Supreme Court justice to determine what is good for society. That is not why you are there. You are there to interpret, to make a ruling based on the rule of law and based on the right interpretation of that law. Now, he makes an interpretation based on the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, equal rights, the Equal Rights Clause of the 14th Amendment. Anyone knows when that amendment was written, it was never, ever, ever about this. But he made a decision not based on the rule of law, but based on his own personal feelings about the subject. That's not what you're there to do. I'm sorry. We elect Congress to make laws based on what they think is best and based on the people involved. But we did not elect you to do that. John Roberts, who was actually on the right side, he was on the dissenting opinion for once. And by the way, as big of a deal as this is, to me, the Obamacare decision, which came out yesterday, is an even bigger deal. And I'm going to talk about that in the next segment. We really have to get into the details of the Obamacare decision in the next segment because, you know, if someone gets married or not to a gay person, if a gay couple gets married, it doesn't really affect me. It doesn't really affect my family in the big scheme of things. It might affect society and our culture. But when we're talking about Obamacare and all the mandates brought down by that really affects me. It affects my pocketbook. It affects my job. It affects people I know and have finding a job. You want to talk about what's hurting my generation most in the job field, it's Obamacare. There's so many people I know, they have no idea what Obamacare is about, and they're like, well, I'm part-time, but why do I only get 20 hours a week? Why can't I get like 35? Well, that's because that's in Obamacare. It ruled that a full-time work week is now 30 hours. You can't work any 30 hours because that forces the business to pay for your health care, and they're not going to do that. So right there, you have people, they have no idea. A lot of people in my generation, majority obviously, voted for Obama, think Obamacare is great, and then they complain when it affects their job. And it's like, well, I told you so. Sorry, I told you so. So we're going to get into the Obamacare ruling in the next segment. But obviously what's fresh on people's minds right now is this Supreme Court ruling on gay marriage. And John Roberts says, if you are among the many Americans of whatever sexual orientation who favor expanding same-sex marriage, by all means celebrate today's decision. Celebrate the achievement of a desired goal. Celebrate the opportunity for a new expression of commitment to a partner. But do not celebrate the Constitution. It had nothing to do with it. I think Scalia might have put it best where he wrote, today's decree says that my ruler, and the ruler of 320 million Americans coast to coast, is a majority of the 9 lawyers on the Supreme Court. Exactly what I was saying. The opinion in these cases is the furthest extension in fact, and the furthest extension one can even imagine, of the court's claimed power to create liberties that the Constitution and its amendments neglect to mention. This practice of constitutional revision by an unelected committee of 9, always accompanied as it is today by extravagant praise of liberty. Like I said, most people on my social media, they're saying this is liberty, they're praising liberty, this is liberty moving forward, this is progress. And that's exactly what he says they're doing. But it robs the people of the most important liberty they asserted in the Declaration of Independence and won in the Revolution of 1776, the freedom to govern themselves. Like I said, this wasn't decided by the people. This wasn't decided by our representatives. This wasn't us governing ourselves. This was 9 justices, 5 of them, deciding what the law of the land was, not based on any legislation, but just deciding it for everybody. This is the kind of power that you have given the Supreme Court and you're going to expect to see for the rest of your lives. So enjoy it now. Enjoy it now, because one day you're going to get a ruling you don't like. And I'll just be sitting here and saying, I told you so, I guess. I hate to say that. Actually, I love to say that. I told you so, because I'm usually right. All right, and in the next segment, I'm going to get into Obamacare and all that stuff. You are listening to, oh, by the way, if you have a call, 407-674-1025, you agree or disagree with me. You're listening to the voice of reason, Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 102.5 WFLA, and BeyondReasonRadio.com.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. Now, back to Beyond Reason Radio.
Yes, there's a lot of different ways to catch the show Beyond Reason Radio. You can catch it on my website, beyondreasonradio.com. Bunch of different ways to catch the podcast, just everywhere, and it's all free. It's all free, huh? This is generous Yaffee helping you be enlightened, be informed, I guess.
That's so nice of you.
I know, isn't it? It's just so nice of me out there, giving it out for free, as Mike said. I thank you all for joining me this Friday night. I'm the voice of reason that sifts through everything is beyond reason. And as I was telling you, to me, the Supreme Court ruling is beyond reason, mostly because, as I said before, we're not governing ourselves anymore. We're allowing justices to make laws, basically. You know, words, I made in a Twitter post earlier today. You can follow me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee. I made a comment earlier that I guess words and definitions no longer have meaning. Or it means whatever the Supreme Court says it means. Think about that. Because now I'm going to get into the Obamacare ruling. And what the Obamacare case was about is there was a line in the Obamacare law, things like 5,000 pages long, and I'm going to get to why that's a problem in a little bit. But there was a line in the Obamacare law that said it was up to the states to make the exchanges, not the federal government. It said the states have to make the exchanges. But the federal government did for the states that didn't want to. But the law didn't give them the authority to do that. That's what the law said. Those are the words of the law. So you would think the Supreme Court would look at the actual words of the law and decide, well, that's what the law says. You are the people that made the law. We're just looking at the law at Supreme Court. Congress actually makes the law. So if that's what it says, we have to interpret it that way. But no, what they actually did, words I guess mean whatever the Supreme Court says it means, is what the Supreme Court justices actually did. And John Roberts, unfortunately, is one of them. He's no longer the conservative justice that everyone said he is. But what they actually did, and I've actually read the opinion here, is he found a way. It was like he was trying to find a way to make this work. That even admits that some of this is in the law, some of it in the law is misguided and not written right. But he's like, oh, we have to look at the context. It's like he was searching through and he's like, how am I going to make this? How am I going to make this pass? It's obviously not in the law, but I got to find some way to make it pass. So this is what he did. He says, well, in the context and in what was intended, so now he determines what it actually says, even though that's not what it actually says. And he determines, apparently, what is intended. But what I think is the most amazing about the Supreme Court decision when it comes to the Obamacare law is, once again, at the beginning of it, he talks about, this is John Roberts, he talks about not why it's lawful, but he talks about how the Affordable Care Act is supposed to help all of these things. Okay, that's fine, but it's not your job, once again, to talk about what's best for society. That's Congress's job. It's your job to interpret the law as it is written. This is what I'm telling you when it comes to gay marriage and it comes to Obamacare. You've basically given all your power to 5 people in dark robes. That's it. I mean, look at this. In 2006, however, Massachusetts discovered a way to make the guaranteed issue and community rating requirements work. This is in John Roberts' opinion. Requiring individuals to buy insurance and providing tax credits to certain individuals to make insurance more affordable. The combination of these reforms, insurance market regulations, blah, 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 enabled Massachusetts to drastically reduce its uninsured rate. Okay, John Roberts, why are you mentioning that? Why are you talking about how the Massachusetts law benefited society? What does it have to do with interpreting the law? Who cares what you think about if the law is good or not? That's not your job. Your job is to interpret the law as it is written. But he doesn't. He finds a way because he likes the law. He likes what the law is doing. and he finds a way to make it pass somehow. This is where we are. 407-674-1025, toll free 855-545-1025. I want to get into Obama's comments as well. We're going to get into Obama's comments on this Supreme Court ruling, more on the Obamacare stuff. And I told you at the beginning of the show, the emperor has no clothes. Obama, he gets all this praise, but he really has no clothes. And the Supreme Court has no robes. We see them for who they really are. And that's not impartial justices basing their decision on the law. That's them. Basically, they're becoming activists. They're becoming activists and doing what they believe is best, not about what the actual law says. That's amazing. And actually, I think I'm going to wait, guys, in the control. I think I'm going to wait for the audio in the next minute. I'm going to get into more of what Obama said. And the reason why I have to get into Obama's comments on this is because if you think that, this means Obamacare is a law, this is the end-all, be-all of healthcare, Obamacare is passed, this is healthcare for the better. Nope. This is only the beginning. This is only step one in the Democrats' plan and Obama's plan to change healthcare in this country. And those out there who are around my age, who are having jobs, who get used to working part-time jobs. Instead of getting a full-time job, you're going to have to work 2 part-time jobs. Producer Michael Formasano is in there crying.
It's just too real.
You're a little bit younger than me, but I bet you know a lot of people around our age who can't find full-time work.
Absolutely. I can't even find full-time work
Exactly.
yet.
And I bet you, I've talked to people who try to find full-time work because of this law. And they try to find full-time work, and the employer will say, we're not hiring full-time because of Obamacare. They'll literally say, because of Obamacare.
Really?
I've had employers tell people that.
I've had them say, we'll give you full-time, but we're going to cut your hours.
What?
Like, what?
That doesn't make any sense. We're going to give you full-time, but we're not going to give you full-time hours?
Let me rephrase. We'll give you full-time, but limited full-time. Like, you can only work until a certain point, and then you're no longer full-time.
Oh, I see.
You have to go down to part-time.
And it's all because of the new rules of Obamacare. And a lot of the businesses haven't even been affected by it yet. A lot of that kicks in next year. So we're all told by Obama and everything, the economy is getting so much better. But while our generation is stuck in mediocrity, where our opportunity to grow, to either start a business or to get in a business and grow in a business and make decent money and to help ourselves, it's not there. We're very stagnant. Wages for the middle class are not growing. It's growing for the rich, and the poor is fine because they have a record number of people on food stamps, so they're doing better. But the middle class, the core of this country, they're stuck, and a lot of it's because of this law. But the real issue I want to talk about is the Supreme Court's ruling on this law. And Justice Antonin Scalia, who actually wrote the dissenting opinion on it, he said you might as well call it SCOTUS care because they're the ones deciding this. And he says exactly what I said. He said the Supreme Court of the United States favors some laws over others and is prepared to do whatever it takes to uphold and assist its favorites. I'm telling you, giving all the power to these 5 people. He says words no longer have meaning. Now, he admits this is not new, but he says it's getting worse. It's unbelievable. I'm telling you, all you liberals out there who are praising this, he said it's going to bite you one day. They made Congress, not this court. This is Scalia talking about the Constitution. Philosophy ignores the American people's decision to give Congress all legislative powers enumerated in the Constitution. They made Congress, not this court, responsible for both making laws and mending them, he added. We lack the prerogative to repair laws that do not work out in practice. just as the people lack the ability to throw us out of office if they dislike the solutions we concoct. What he is saying there is basically what Justin Roberts said. Oh, the law is not imperfect, but it's up to the court to make it perfect. That's basically what John Roberts said. And Scalia said that was never the role of the court. It was the role of Congress to do the laws. It was just the role of the court to rule on the laws. We are destroying the rule of law. All this really hurts the civil society, by the way. Because what we've done is we've destroyed words and the meaning of words. We've destroyed the rule of law because it can be changed on a whim by leaders. By these 5 people in black robes, as I say. We've destroyed traditions and cultures, normal traditions like marriage, like faith. Those are being attacked. Those are being destroyed. And when we destroy those traditions, we also destroy the family. All these things that used to be stability to the civil society are under attack. And I know a lot of people, in the Yaffee generation, they're at the age where they're starting to have kids, they're starting to raise families, have kids, grow as a family. And think about I feel bad for our kids. Now, I think there's a lot of hope out there. It's still the United States of America. But a lot of those things that gave us stability and gave our heritage, our forefathers or whatever, stability, are being slowly taken away piece by piece in the civil society. So what's our foundation? Well, our foundation now is the whim of a few rulers in the Supreme Court. Agree or disagree? 407-674-1025. You are listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 1025 WFLA, and BeyondReasonRadio.com.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime.
Welcome back. You're listening to that voice of reason, Michael Yaffee, along with Michael Formisano, producer. And, actually, I have a question for you, Mike. First of all, have you heard, most of your reaction you've seen on Facebook has been over the gay marriage ruling, I'm guessing, right?
Correct.
Yesterday, when the Obamacare ruling came out, did you really see anything?
Not that much.
Not really.
I mean, yeah, there was a couple links to pages posted on.
But no really opinion. It's interesting.
Not that many, to be completely honest with you.
How that is, because in all honesty, that ruling probably affects them more than the gay marriage thing. Yet the gay marriage thing is all the hype.
It's pop culture.
Pop culture. Yep, this is the kind of stuff that we're paying attention to. This is why you have to listen to me. Because if you want the real news, what's really going on, what's really going to affect you, well, you just have to listen to me and Mike. Yeah. And by the way, now we're going to get into the president's comments, because his comments, I don't really care about his comments on gay marriage or whatever. He's just saying what everyone else is saying. Love is love. Okay, so if that's love, what if somebody wants to marry, their sister? Do they have the right to do that? Here's the main question I have. I want somebody to answer this. What is the definition of marriage? I'm serious about this. What is the definition of marriage? 407-674-1025, toll free 855-545-1025. Think about it. Because for history, that used to be a very easy question to answer. Now it's not, because we've expanded it. So what is the definition? Because I'm not sure. I'm really not sure anymore. It can mean a lot more things now. So I want someone to tell me, call me, what is the definition of marriage? 407-674-1025. Back to Obamacare and stuff. Obama, of course, had immediately after the ruling yesterday, he had to come out and talk about this. And, well, this is one of the first things that he said about this, which is interesting. Uh-oh, did it freeze?
If the partisan challenge to this law had succeeded, millions of Americans would have had thousands of dollars worth of tax credits taken from them. For many, insurance would have become unaffordable again. Many would have become uninsured again. Ultimately, everyone's premiums could have gone up. America would have gone backwards. And that's not what we do. That's not what America does. We move forward. So today is a victory for hardworking Americans all across this country whose lives will continue to become more secure in a changing economy because of this law.
Now listen to what he said there. This is, again, what I'm talking about. He's just like did what John Roberts did. Everything he said, nothing had to do with the legality of what the law said, with the legality of what's in the law, what the words mean, how the law is going to do. All he could talk about is how this law is a good thing, how this law is helping people and blah, blah, blah. And that's why it's good that the Supreme Court ruled this way. It's not the Supreme Court's job to determine what is good for society. It's the Supreme Court's job to determine what the law says. But Obama doesn't care about what the law says. He's just glad it passed because it helps his agenda. In the Supreme Court, I guess those people in the Supreme Court are happy because it helped their agenda. So even he could not address the issue in the law that was at stake. The idea that it says the states have to make the exchanges. That's what the law says. That's what the Supreme Court should have ruled on. That's what it should have been about. They should have ruled that the federal government can't make the exchanges because that's what the law says. Even Obama couldn't argue against that. So what Obama did instead is he just had to talk about how the law is doing all this good and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's fine, but that's not what it was about here. But that's what he's going to do. Now, Obama said something in the next cut, which talks about, well, you just have to listen. I'll comment on this. Go ahead.
And unlike Social Security or Medicare, a lot of Americans still don't know what Obamacare is beyond all the political noise in Washington. Across the country, there remain people who are directly benefiting from the law, but don't even know it. And that's okay. There's no card that says Obamacare when you enroll.
So he said, well, a lot of American people don't know what's in the law. Of course they don't know what's in the law. The law was 3,000 pages long. Nobody knows what's in the law. It could be anything in the law. But what's amazing to me is when he talks about people don't know what's in the law, apparently you did not know what was in the law. Apparently the Democrats who passed it in Congress did not even know what was in the law. Because if you would have known it was in the law, you would have known that it gave the states the ability to create the exchanges, not the federal government. So when you talk about people don't even know what's in this law, you didn't even know it was in the law. Nobody does. It's so complicated, and that's done on purpose. It's done on purpose because no one's going to be able to interpret it, and that gives the power, once again, to the interpreters. That gives the power to the federal government to interpret it as they see fit, because you can't understand it. And then it gives the power to the Supreme Court to try to make some work some way, because it says, well, in context it works this way. I don't know what it is in context. It's 3,000 pages long, full of regulations, full of new taxes, full of new mandates. Nobody's ever going to know what's in this law. And like I said, it's done on purpose, because in the federal government, and they can determine on their own, not what the law says, but they can just determine what it says based on their opinion of it. Amazing. Now, the main point I want to make here from this next cut. Well, just go ahead and play and I'll make this point.
Let's be clear. We've still got work to do to make health care in America even better. We'll keep working to provide consumers with all the tools you need to make informed choices about your care. We'll keep working to increase the use of preventive care that avoids bigger problems down the road. We'll keep working to boost the steadily improving quality of care in hospitals, bring down costs even lower, make the system work even better.
I told you. This is only the beginning. People thought, well, this law was going to save the country's healthcare system. This law was never meant to save the healthcare system as it was. This law was a step in the direction towards socialized medicine. Trust me when I tell you that, because Obama has said he's for that. They're for that. They want to go in the direction towards socialized medicine. And I told you when the law passed, I told you when it passed, that what was going to happen is they were going to come to a point one day, because the law wasn't going to work. They were going to come to a point when they're going to say, this law doesn't go far enough. Yeah, the law's done some things, but this law doesn't go far enough. So what we have to do is add more to it and give the government more power in the healthcare market to help better the healthcare system. I told you all that. They were going to come out and say this law doesn't go far enough and that they're going to go more and more towards socialized medicine. And then Obama just proved me right. He just said, look, he said, we're not done. We're not done. We have a lot of work to do. Yeah, Michael likes my impression. He liked that. We have a lot of work to do. We have but my point is, I distracted myself with my own greatness of my Obama voice there. The main point is, though, is that this is only the beginning. I told you they were going to come and they were going to say, this is not the end all be all. This is how we have to go even further. We have more work to do. We have to expand this even more. And that is what he was saying right there. And what's amazing is this law. And he talked about we're going to cut costs. When the government runs things, the only way the government can cut costs at that point is through rationing care. That's what they do overseas. They have to ration care. So if you're, he said it later in his speech, people were saying scare tactics of death panels and death panels never happen. Eventually they're going to have to ration care. And what they're going to do is they're going to say, well, old people, they don't have much longer to live anyway, so we're going to take away some of their care. Because we only have so much money and we have to cut costs, and we're going to cut costs that way. That's what happens when the government runs things. But this law, what always bothered me about this law is the true issue in healthcare today is the cost of care. The costs and expenses were growing exponentially. And most of that's because of all the government regulations already involved in the system. So instead of addressing that issue, instead of getting doctors and medical professionals together to actually see how can we make this system more efficient to cut costs without cutting the quality of care, how can we cut costs, make great quality care more affordable? This law never addressed that. In fact, insurance premiums have gone up. And they'll say, well, more people are covered. But that wasn't the issue. It wasn't the issue of people getting covered. The issue was it costs too much. So even if you are covered, it still costs too much. So even though more people are covered, it still costs too much. And that's why he's saying, well, we're not done. We have more work to do. We have to work on cutting costs. And that's going to be rationing care. You're going to see. So a lot of my age, they have parents who are older. You're going to start to see that the elderly are not going to be able to get the care that they want because they have to cut costs. And instead of cutting costs through the free market, for getting the government out of the way, through letting insurance companies maybe offer cheaper plans for worst case scenario coverage, like a young person might not need to be covered for a bunch of things. They just need worst case scenario coverage. They can't get that because the laws mandate the insurance companies to cover all these different things. Even if that young person doesn't need it to cover all those different things, the law says they have to cover it. So it costs a ton of money. That's what's happening. And it's what this law didn't solve that problem. So what's going to happen is they're going to inch more and more towards socialized medicine. Oh, this law doesn't go far enough. Then they'll do something else. Oh, that doesn't go far enough. Then they'll do something else. Oh, we just need to completely take it over and get the private market out of it. It's coming. You watch. 407-674-1025. Now I'm going to shift gears in the last segment because there's a topic out there that no one is talking about that I happen to found and needs to be addressed. And that's what's happening with the war on drugs. And a lot of people in my generation are going to disagree with me. So that's what will make it fun. 407-674-1025. You're listening Beyond Reason Radio. News Radio 1025 WFLA, BeyondReasonRadio.com.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. Just search Bud Henninger or stream the show live by searching News Radio 1025 WFLA. By liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio.
Yes, you're listening to Beyond Reason Radio here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com. So I want to get into another issue. I'm sort of shifting gears here because this is something I found but that no one is talking about, and I just found it really interesting. Now, when you take a poll, especially of young people, especially people like my age and Mike's age, and you talk about the war on drugs and you talk about legalizing marijuana, the majority of them support it. They support legalizing marijuana, and they say, and Rand Paul has been a big proponent of this, they say the war on drugs has been a failure. This is what I hear. The war on drugs has been a failure. It's just cost too much money. It's just caused more crime, yada, yada, yada. And usually what I hear is this argument that, well, people still do drugs, so the war on drugs must have failed. And I always hate that argument because that would be like saying, well, people still commit murder. So why do we enforce murder laws? Because they're still murders. The point is to have a deterrent so it doesn't happen nearly as much. So it makes it very hard and very unlikely that someone will do that. So it's like to say, oh, well, there's still going to be people that do drugs, so we should just stop doing this war on drugs. To me, it's like you could say that about anything. There's still people who murder. Does that mean we should get laws on murderers? There's still people who steal and rob. There's still people who rape. Should we get rid of those laws too because it still happens? I don't know anybody who thinks that. But when it comes to drugs, for some reason, we get that impression. Now, it's very interesting because, in fact, that's what's really not true is that it caused more crime. In fact, at the end of the Bush years, I found these stats really interesting. The end of the Bush years, youth use of marijuana had declined 25%. Nationally, prescription opiate misuse peaked in 2006. Internationally, the major source of U.S. heroin and cocaine had been brought under control. Heroin produced in Colombia dropped so low that the U.S. government observations had difficulty finding it. Colombian cocaine production trafficked through Mexico declined in an unprecedented achievement by nearly 75%. The result was a 50% decline in U.S. cocaine use by 2011, driving down emergency department episodes, the need for drug treatment, and saving lives. Moreover, persistent efforts to legalize marijuana in the states had been turned back under White House leadership, and youth use of drugs were going down. So here we go. We had this argument, especially when Obama got in office, that the war on drugs was bad, that people using drugs, it's just going up. More people are using drugs, crime's going up, the cartels are more powerful than ever. That's why the war on drugs is a failure. And then when you look at the facts, it's not true. That the war on drugs is actually having an effect, it's actually having a positive effect. And I'm not saying it's perfect. Anytime you say there's a war on something, it's not perfect. But there was a reason why we were enforcing drug laws. There's a reason why we were going after people hard that were selling drugs, that were using drugs, because it was working. It was declining the amount of people on drugs. By the way, notice that the crime rates went down as well in the past 10, 20 years. Crime rates are at record lows. And they'll say, oh, there's too many people in prison. Yeah, but the crime rates are also very low. So you have people like Rand Paul that want to let a lot of these drug users out of prison. They want to let the drug, non-violent criminals out of prison. But crime rates are at a low. Why would we want to stop what's working? But it's all about politics is what it is. It's all about politics. That's why the left, that's why Rand Paul, that's why they say, oh, we need to stop the war on drugs. We need to stop arresting people for drug crimes, and we need to let non-violent criminals out because they know it'll get them more votes, especially with minorities. It's all about politics. Usually, everything's about politics. This whole gay marriage thing is all about politics. It's about getting more votes for Democrats. And the leftists in the court want that. And Obamacare, once again, it's always about politics. But I just found it interesting that we were winning the drug war. Well, Obama changed that. Over 6 years, the Obama administration has neglected drug control at home and abroad. Not everything under Obama has failed. Prescription drugs has gone down, so that's the only thing that has not gone up under Obama. But today, the effort to control the supply of drugs, now declared futile as policy, has turned into surrender. Mexican marijuana still flows across our borders, with the additional threat that cartels now control marijuana operations inside the United States. Even more devastating, Mexican cartels have sharply increased the production of meth and heroin. Seizures of these drugs at the southwest border have skyrocketed since 2009, right after Obama was elected. Interesting. Meth use, trafficking, and use is again climbing after a sharp decline, while heroin is now the greatest drug threat reported by law enforcement to the Drug Enforcement Administration, with purity and potency of both drugs spiraling upward. In an epidemic of heroin overdose deaths, up 39% since 2012, causing alarm at the Centers for Disease Control. These drugs are literally flooding U.S. streets. This is all started when Obama was elected in office, because the Obama administration was making it easy on drugs. And just that's where we are. Well, okay, it's the weekend now. Enough of the depressing stuff. Enough of the hard-hitting news. I had to give you the truth. But there we are. But now I want you to go to Doc Street Side Grill. So I want you to forget all about all this and go to Doc Street Side Grill over the weekend. This hour, of course, was brought to you by Doc Street Side Grill. Listening Beyond Reason Radio, and I will catch you guys, well, next week.